Some souls are not tired of life because they are weak. They are tired because they have lived through pleasure, pain, love, loss, success, failure, birth, death, and rebirth again and again. The Vedas teach that not every soul is at the same place in the journey. Some souls are still chasing the world, some are still trapped in karma, but some souls are standing very close to the final door of freedom. That final door is called Moksha. Moksha is not ordinary death. Moksha is freedom from the endless cycle of birth and rebirth. It is the moment the soul stops wandering and returns to the eternal truth. So if worldly things no longer satisfy your heart, if loneliness feels peaceful, if pain has made you wiser, and if something inside you keeps searching for truth, then this message may be for your soul. Stay until the end, because the seventh lesson reveals the deepest sign that a soul may be close to moksha. And if you believe your soul is seeking freedom, like this video, subscribe and write in the comments, "My soul seeks moksha." Lesson 1. The soul becomes tired of temporary pleasures. The first sign that a soul is coming close to moksha is not that it hates the world, but that it can no longer be fooled by the world. It has tasted pleasure before, it has chased desire before, it has won things before, it has lost things before, and after so many experiences across many lifetimes, something deep inside begins to whisper, "This cannot be the final purpose of my existence." In the beginning of the soul's journey, the mind believes happiness is hidden in getting more. More success, more comfort, more attention, more love, more respect, more beauty, more control, more victory over others. The person thinks, "When I receive this, I will finally feel complete." But when that thing finally comes, the happiness stays for a moment, then slowly fades, and the same emptiness returns again in a new form. This is the great trap of temporary pleasure. It promises completion, but it only gives a short taste. It promises peace, but it creates more hunger. It promises freedom, but it quietly builds attachment. The soul keeps running from one desire to another, from one relationship to another, from one achievement to another, from one dream to another, hoping that the next thing will finally end the restlessness within. But the soul that is close to moksha begins to see the pattern. It starts realizing that every worldly pleasure has a shadow. The pleasure of praise carries the fear of insult. The pleasure of possession carries the fear of loss. The pleasure of beauty carries the fear of aging. The pleasure of success carries the fear of failure. The pleasure of attachment carries the fear of separation. Wherever the soul clings, suffering begins to grow quietly behind it. This does not mean that the awakened soul becomes sad, dry, or lifeless. It does not mean the soul rejects food, family, work, love, beauty, or the simple joys of life. No, a mature soul can still live in the world, but it stops worshipping the world as the source of ultimate peace. It can enjoy what comes, but it does not become a prisoner of what comes. It can love deeply, but it does not turn love into a chain. It can work sincerely, but it does not make success its identity. This is why some people suddenly feel different from the crowd. Others may still be excited by comparison, luxury, attention, arguments, and endless chasing, but this soul begins to feel quiet inside. It may look at the same things it once desired and feel no deep attraction anymore. It may ask, "Why am I not satisfied by the things everyone else is chasing?" But this is not confusion. This is awakening. The Vedas reveal that desire is one of the forces that pulls the soul back into birth again and again. As long as the soul is thirsty for unfinished experiences, it continues moving through the cycle of karma and rebirth. It wants to taste, own, prove, enjoy, defeat, become, and repeat. But when the soul begins to understand that no temporary object can satisfy an eternal being, the chain of desire becomes weaker. A soul close to moksha starts looking for a happiness that does not depend on people, possessions, praise, or circumstances. It wants peace that cannot be stolen by loss. It wants truth that does not disappear with time. It wants freedom that does not rise and fall with the body, the mind, and the world. This longing is sacred because it shows that the soul has started turning away from illusion and moving toward liberation. So if you feel tired of chasing things that once excited you, do not think something is wrong with you. Maybe your soul is not becoming empty. Maybe your soul is becoming mature. Maybe it has walked through enough lifetimes to understand that pleasure is not the same as peace, and comfort is not the same as freedom. The soul close to moksha does not run from life. It simply stops sleeping inside life. It lives, but with awareness. It loves, but with wisdom. It receives, but with gratitude. It loses, but with surrender. And slowly, as the hunger for temporary things becomes weaker, the light of eternal truth becomes stronger within. This is the first golden sign of a soul near moksha. The world may still be around it, but the world no longer owns it. Lesson 2. The soul starts seeing karma as a teacher, not a punishment. The second sign that a soul is moving close to moksha is that it stops seeing karma as punishment and begins seeing karma as a teacher. In the earlier stages of the journey, the soul looks at pain and says, "Why is this happening to me?" But when the soul becomes more mature, it starts asking a deeper question: what is this trying to awaken within me? This one change is powerful because the moment the soul stops only complaining about life and starts learning from life, karma begins to lose its darkness. The Vedas reveal that karma is not random cruelty. Karma is not the universe blindly attacking a person. Karma is the law of cause and effect, moving through visible and invisible layers of existence. Every thought, every action, every intention, every desire, every attachment, and every wound leaves an impression on the subtle body. These impressions do not simply vanish when the physical body dies. They travel with the soul, shaping its tendencies, its fears, its attractions, its relationships, its struggles, and even the lessons it must face in future births. This is why some people enter life with strange burdens, deep fears, natural wisdom, strong desires, or powerful connections they cannot explain. The soul does not arrive empty, it arrives carrying unfinished patterns. Some karma comes as blessings, some karma comes as difficulty, and some karma comes as repeated lessons that keep appearing until the soul finally understands what it is meant to learn. A young soul fights every painful experience because it only wants comfort. It believes that a good life means a life without difficulty. It wants every desire fulfilled, every relationship perfect, every plan successful, and every prayer answered in the exact way the mind expects. But a soul that is closer to moksha begins to understand that comfort alone does not free the soul. Sometimes comfort keeps the soul asleep, while difficulty forces the soul to open its eyes. This does not mean suffering is easy. This does not mean pain should be romanticized. This does not mean a person should accept injustice, abuse, or cruelty silently. No, the Vedic path is not weakness. It teaches awareness. It teaches right action. It teaches the soul to act with clarity, protect Dharma, create boundaries, and choose wisdom. But even while doing this, the awakened soul does not waste its suffering in hatred. It uses suffering as fire. When someone betrays an immature soul, it may become bitter and vengeful. But when betrayal touches a mature soul, it begins to learn discernment. It starts seeing where it ignored truth, where it attached too deeply, where it gave power to the wrong person, where it expected permanence from an unstable relationship. The pain becomes a mirror. It does not destroy the soul. It teaches the soul how to love with wisdom instead of blindness. When loss comes, an immature soul may collapse into endless anger against life. But a soul close to moksha slowly begins to understand impermanence. It learns that nothing in this world can be held forever through force. The body changes, relationships change, situations change, time changes, and even the emotions we think will last forever eventually change. Loss becomes a painful teacher, but it teaches the soul to stop clinging to temporary forms as if they are eternal. When failure comes, an immature soul may feel worthless. It may think its whole identity has been destroyed. But a mature soul begins to see that failure is not the end of the self, it is the breaking of false pride. It teaches humility, it teaches patience, it teaches effort without arrogance. It shows the soul that its value is not dependent on one victory or one defeat. The awakened soul learns to work sincerely, but not worship the result. When insult comes, the immature soul burns with ego. It wants revenge, explanation, and recognition. But a soul moving toward moksha begins to ask, why did these words disturb me so much? What identity inside me is still demanding protection? What pride inside me is still controlling my peace? This does not mean the person becomes weak. It means the person becomes free from being controlled by every opinion. This is the golden difference between a trapped soul and an awakening soul. A trapped soul reacts to karma blindly and creates more karma through anger, revenge, jealousy, greed, pride, and attachment. But an awakening soul observes karma, learns from karma, acts wisely through karma, and slowly burns karma through awareness. The same experience that could create bondage in one person can create freedom in another. The Vedas reveal that karma continues as long as the soul keeps acting from ignorance and desire. If pain creates hatred, a new chain begins. If loss creates obsession, a new chain begins. If insult creates revenge, a new chain begins. If desire creates attachment, a new chain begins. But when the soul responds with awareness, humility, forgiveness, discipline, detachment, and Dharma, the chain weakens. This is why some souls become calm after suffering instead of cruel. They have been burned, but the fire purified them. They have been rejected, but rejection taught them self-knowledge. They have been misunderstood, but misunderstanding taught them silence. They have been delayed, but delay taught them patience. They have been broken, but brokenness taught them surrender. Such souls are not ordinary. They are becoming lighter. A soul close to moksha no longer says, life is only happening against me. It begins to say, life is showing me what still binds me. If anger keeps returning, karma is showing where ego is alive. If fear keeps returning, karma is showing where attachment is alive. If jealousy keeps returning, karma is showing where comparison is alive. If heartbreak keeps returning, karma is showing where dependence is alive. If restlessness keeps returning, karma is showing where the soul has forgotten its own center. This way of seeing life changes everything. The person stops running from every uncomfortable truth. They stop blaming everyone for every wound. They stop repeating the same reactions and expecting a different destiny. They begin to participate consciously in their own liberation. Every experience becomes material for awakening. Every relationship becomes a mirror. Every difficulty becomes a test of awareness. Every delay becomes a practice of patience. Every pain becomes an invitation to go deeper. This is one of the strongest signs that a soul is near moksha. It no longer wastes life by only asking for comfort. It asks for freedom. It no longer wants only an easy path. It wants a true path. It no longer sees karma as an enemy chasing it. It sees karma as a sacred teacher removing ignorance layer by layer. And when karma becomes a teacher, the soul becomes fearless, because then even pain cannot fully defeat it. Even loss cannot fully blind it. Even insult cannot fully control it. Even failure cannot fully define it. The soul has discovered that every karmic event is pointing toward one question: are you still bound, or are you becoming free? This is why some souls come close to moksha before others. They do not escape karma by hating life. They transcend karma by understanding life. They do not become free by avoiding every lesson. They become free by learning the lesson so deeply that the same chain can no longer hold them. The second golden sign of a soul near moksha is this: when karma comes, the soul does not only suffer, it awakens. Lesson 3. The soul begins to lose interest in ego identity. The third sign that a soul is moving close to moksha is that the ego begins to feel heavy. In the early stages of life, a person may believe they are only their name, their face, their body, their family, their profession, their success, their reputation, their memories, their pain, and the opinions people have about them. They spend their whole life protecting this identity, decorating it, defending it, comparing it, and proving it. But when the soul becomes more mature, a quiet distance begins to appear between the true self and the false self. The person still lives in the world. They still have a name. They still have duties. They still have relationships. They still have work, responsibilities, emotions, and a personal story. But deep inside, something begins to say, I am not only this story. I am not only this body. I am not only this mind. I am not only what people praise, criticize, remember, or forget. This realization may come slowly, but once it begins, the old ego identity can never feel as real as it did before. The Vedas reveal that one of the greatest causes of bondage is false identification. The eternal soul forgets its own nature and begins to identify with temporary coverings. It says, I am the body, so it fears aging and death. It says, I am the mind, so it becomes trapped in thoughts and emotions. It says, I am my status, so it becomes restless for respect. It says, I am my possessions, so it becomes terrified of loss. It says, I am my relationships, so it becomes broken when people change. It says, I am my past, so it keeps carrying pain that should have become wisdom long ago. This false identity creates endless suffering because everything the ego holds is unstable. The body is changing every day. The mind is changing every moment. Relationships are changing with time. Social respect rises and falls. Wealth comes and goes. Beauty fades. Strength fades. Praise disappears. Even the people who love us cannot keep us safe from impermanence. So when the soul mistakes these temporary things as the self, life becomes full of fear. A soul close to moksha begins to see this clearly. It starts noticing how much suffering came from trying to protect a false image. It remembers how many times it became angry because someone did not respect the image it wanted to show. It remembers how many times it became jealous because someone else appeared greater in the eyes of the world. It remembers how many times it became afraid because its identity was connected to something that could be taken away. It remembers how many times it suffered because it wanted people to see it in a certain way. This is why the ego becomes exhausting for the awakened soul. The soul starts feeling tired of pretending, tired of proving, tired of competing, tired of explaining itself to people who cannot understand, tired of decorating a temporary personality while the eternal self remains forgotten. The person may suddenly become less interested in arguments, less interested in showing off, less interested in impressing others, less interested in winning every conversation, and less interested in being seen as special. This does not mean they have lost confidence. It means they have started finding confidence in something deeper than public approval. In the lower state of consciousness, a person needs constant confirmation from the outside. They want people to admire them, agree with them, notice them, follow them, praise them, and validate their existence. If people praise them, they feel high. If people ignore them, they feel low. If people criticize them, they feel wounded. This means their peace is not in their own hands. Their peace is controlled by the tongues, eyes, and opinions of others. But the soul close to moksha begins to withdraw its power from the world's judgment. It starts asking a deeper question. Who am I when nobody praises me? Who am I when nobody sees me? Who am I when my role changes? Who am I when my body becomes old? Who am I when my achievements are forgotten? Who am I when my name is no longer spoken? These questions are not ordinary thoughts. They are sacred cracks in the wall of ego. Through these cracks, the light of the soul begins to enter. The Vedic path teaches that the soul is the witness behind the body and mind. The body acts, the mind thinks, the emotions rise, the senses experience. But behind all of this, there is a silent awareness that observes. This witness has seen childhood come and go. It has seen youth come and go. It has seen happiness come and go. It has seen sadness come and go. It has seen desires rise and fall. It has seen relationships change. Yet the witness remains. The one who notices change is not the changing thing. When the soul begins to understand this, ego identity loses its grip. The person no longer feels the same need to defend every opinion. They no longer feel forced to answer every insult. They no longer feel destroyed by every rejection. They no longer feel superior when praised or worthless when ignored. They begin to live from the inner witness, not from the wounded ego. This stage is very powerful, but it can also be uncomfortable. When the ego starts weakening, the person may feel confused because old desires no longer excite them, old victories no longer satisfy them, and old social games feel meaningless. People may misunderstand them and say, "You have changed." But what has changed is not the soul becoming cold. What has changed is that the soul is no longer willing to live completely inside a false mask. A soul close to moksha begins to prefer truth over image. It would rather be quietly real than loudly admired. It would rather have peace than applause. It would rather be spiritually honest than socially impressive. It would rather sit in silence with a pure heart than stand in the crowd with a restless ego. This is not weakness. This is the dignity of a soul that has started remembering itself. The ego always wants separation. It says, "I am better than them. I am worse than them. I must defeat them. I must be seen by them. I must be different from them. I must be above them." Even when the ego feels inferior, it is still centered on itself. Even when it suffers, it wants attention for suffering. Even when it becomes spiritual, it may secretly want to be seen as more awakened than others. This is why the ego is subtle. It can wear the clothes of pride, pain, knowledge, religion, simplicity, sacrifice, and even humility. But a soul near moksha begins to notice these hidden games. It sees pride when it appears. It sees jealousy when it appears. It sees the desire to be recognized when it appears. It sees the need to prove itself when it appears. And instead of blindly obeying these impulses, the soul pauses. It watches. It becomes aware. This awareness itself begins to dissolve the ego. The soul starts understanding that it does not need to be greater than others to be complete. It does not need to be admired to be worthy. It does not need to be remembered by the world to have meaning. It does not need to win every battle to be strong. It does not need to control every person to feel safe. This is the beginning of inner freedom. When ego identity becomes weak, compassion becomes stronger. The person no longer looks at others only as competitors, threats, or tools. They begin to see that everyone is trapped in some kind of illusion. Some are trapped in pride. Some are trapped in fear, some are trapped in desire, some are trapped in pain, some are trapped in ignorance. And when the soul sees this, it becomes softer, not because it is naive, but because it understands the human condition more deeply. This is why a soul close to moksha often becomes simple in behavior. It does not need to announce its wisdom. It does not need to display its spirituality. It does not need to prove its purity. It does not need to dominate the room. It does not need to make others feel small. The more the soul knows, the less it wants to show off. The closer it comes to truth, the more humble it becomes, because it understands that the ego was never the real self. Many people think spiritual progress means becoming powerful in the eyes of others, but the Vedas point toward a deeper power, becoming free from the need to be powerful in the eyes of others. This is a very rare freedom. A person may still speak strongly when truth requires it. They may still defend Dharma when needed. They may still work, lead, create, and act in the world. But inside, they are not doing it to feed the ego. They are doing it because it is their duty, their service, their path, and their offering. A soul that is far from moksha says, "Look at me." A soul moving closer to moksha says, "Let truth work through me." A soul far from moksha wants to own every achievement. A soul closer to moksha says itself as an instrument. A soul far from moksha is wounded by being unseen. A soul closer to moksha can do good quietly and walk away without demanding praise. This is one of the clearest signs that the soul is becoming lighter. The ego is heavy because it always needs something from the world. It needs admiration, control, status, victory, comparison, and protection. But the soul is light because it rests in being, not in performance. When the person begins to live from the soul instead of the ego, life becomes less dramatic. Small insults no longer feel like death. Small losses no longer destroy the heart. Small delays no longer create panic. Small misunderstandings no longer demand endless explanation. The soul starts to taste a peace that does not come from being seen, but from seeing clearly. It no longer asks, "How can I appear important?" It asks, "How can I become free from false importance?" It no longer asks, "How can I make everyone respect my identity?" It asks, "Who am I beyond every identity?" This question leads the soul toward the doorway of liberation. Near moksha, the ego does not vanish in one moment. It becomes thinner, weaker, quieter, and less believable. The person may still feel ego at times, but they no longer worship it as truth. They may still feel hurt, but they recover with awareness. They may still feel pride, but they recognize it as a passing cloud. They may still have a role in the world, but they do not become lost inside the role. This is spiritual maturity. This is the slow return from false identity to true nature. This is the soul remembering that it was never born only to protect a temporary name. It was born to awaken from ignorance, burn karma, dissolve attachment, and return to the eternal. So if you are losing interest in proving yourself, if you feel tired of wearing masks, if you no longer want to fight for every opinion, if you feel more peaceful when you are simple and unseen, do not think you are becoming weak. Maybe your soul is becoming free. Maybe the ego that once controlled your life is finally losing its throne. Maybe the eternal self is beginning to shine through the temporary personality. The third golden sign of a soul near moksha is this: the person still has an identity in the world, but the identity no longer controls the soul. Lesson 4. The soul feels a natural pull toward detachment. The fourth sign that a soul is moving close to moksha is that detachment begins to rise naturally inside the heart. This detachment is not forced. It is not coldness. It is not hatred for people. It is not running away from responsibility. It is not becoming emotionless, silent, dry, or careless. True Vedic detachment is much deeper than that. It is the sacred ability to live in the world without becoming trapped by the world, to love without turning love into possession, to work without becoming a slave of results, to receive blessings without becoming addicted to them, and to lose things without losing the center of the soul. In the early stages of the soul's journey, attachment feels like love, desire feels like life, and possession feels like security. The mind says, "This person is mine, this success is mine, this body is mine, this beauty is mine, this house is mine, this respect is mine, this life must happen exactly as I want." But the soul does not become free through ownership. The soul becomes more bound. Every time it says mine with fear, another chain is created. Every time it clings to something temporary as if it is eternal, suffering begins quietly behind the attachment. The Vedas reveal that attachment is one of the strongest forces that pulls the soul again and again into the cycle of birth and death. Desire says, "I want this." Attachment says, "I cannot live without this." Fear says, "What if I lose this?" And karma says, "Then return and learn again." This is how the soul becomes caught. It is not only trapped by bad actions, it is also trapped by unfinished longing, emotional dependence, possessive love, pride in identity, and the deep belief that temporary things can give permanent peace. A soul close to moksha begins to see the hidden pain inside attachment. It starts noticing that wherever there is clinging, there is fear. If it clings to youth, it fears aging. If it clings to beauty, it fears change. If it clings to praise, it fears criticism. If it clings to wealth, it fears loss. If it clings to relationships, it fears separation. If it clings to control, it fears uncertainty. If it clings to life itself as a possession, it fears death. The awakened soul sees that attachment does not only give pleasure, it also secretly gives anxiety. This realization does not make the soul cruel, it makes the soul wise. A detached soul does not stop loving people, it stops trying to own people. It does not stop caring, it stops making care into control. It does not stop doing its duty. It stops believing that duty must always produce the exact result the ego wants. It does not stop living, it stops being hypnotized by life. This is why detachment is not the absence of love. Detachment is love purified from fear. Many people think attachment is proof of deep love, but the Vedas guide the soul toward a higher understanding. Attachment often says, "I love you because you make me feel secure. I love you because you complete my identity. I love you because without you I feel empty. I love you because you belong to me." But awakened love says, "I love you, but I will not turn you into my prison. I care for you, but I will not use you to escape myself. I walk with you, but I know every soul has its own karma, its own path, and its own timing." This is the love that becomes lighter, purer, and closer to freedom. A soul nearing moksha begins to understand that every being belongs first to the eternal truth, not to another person's ego. Parents cannot own children forever. Partners cannot own each other's soul. Friends cannot own each other's destiny. The body itself cannot be owned forever by the one living inside it. Everything is given for a time. Everything teaches something, and everything eventually changes form. When the soul understands this deeply, it stops trying to make temporary arrangements into eternal guarantees. This is the point where detachment becomes natural. Earlier, the person may have forced themselves to let go. They may have repeated words of wisdom while still burning inside. They may have said, "I am detached," while secretly waiting, checking, expecting, fearing, and remembering. But when the soul becomes more mature, detachment is no longer just an idea. It becomes a quiet inner knowing. The person may still feel pain, but they do not collapse into possession. They may still miss someone, but they do not beg destiny to reverse itself. They may still desire a result, but they do not allow the result to become their master. This kind of detachment is born from seeing impermanence again and again. The soul has seen people come and go across lifetimes. It has seen bodies rise and fall. It has seen kingdoms become dust, beauty become memory, power become weakness, and promises become silence. It has seen that the world is always moving. Nothing here stands still. Nothing here can be held with a closed fist forever. So the soul begins to open its hand. It does not open the hand because it does not care. It opens the hand because it has finally understood the law of change. The person close to moksha may begin to prefer simplicity, not because they are poor in spirit, but because they are tired of unnecessary weight. They may not feel excited by endless possessions, endless noise, endless comparison, endless drama, and endless social performance. They may want fewer things but deeper peace, fewer people but truer connections, fewer words but more meaning, fewer desires but greater clarity. Their life may become quieter, but their inner world becomes richer. This can confuse people around them. Others may say, "Why are you not chasing like before? Why are you not reacting like before? Why are you not interested in what everyone else is fighting for?" But the soul that is awakening cannot always explain its change. How can it explain that the taste of the world has changed? How can it explain that the same things that once created excitement now feel heavy? How can it explain that it is not depressed, but deeply done with illusion? How can it explain that it still loves life, but it no longer wants to be chained by life? This is a sacred stage. The soul begins to move from outer dependency to inner stability. It no longer wants every person to behave perfectly before it can be peaceful. It no longer wants every situation to go according to plan before it can breathe. It no longer wants the whole world to approve of it before it can feel worthy. It begins to find a center that does not depend on constant outer support. This center is not ego, it is awareness. It is the soul remembering its own inner ground. Detachment also changes the way the person handles relationships. Earlier, they may have chased people who walked away, begged for attention from those who ignored them, tried to fix those who did not want healing, and carried the emotional weight of people who were not ready to grow. But as the soul matures, it begins to understand that love must not become self-destruction, compassion must not become slavery, loyalty must not become blindness, patience must not become permission for repeated disrespect. The awakened soul learns to bless without binding, to forgive without returning to the same wound, and to walk away without hatred when a connection becomes a chain. This is very close to moksha because every deep attachment has the power to pull the soul back into unfinished karma. A person who dies with intense craving, intense hatred, intense regret, intense obsession, or intense possessiveness may carry those impressions forward. The soul continues seeking what it could not release. It continues meeting lessons it could not complete. It continues returning to the field where desire and karma can play out. But when the soul learns to release, the karmic thread becomes weaker. Detachment does not mean refusing responsibility. In fact, true detachment makes duty more pure. A person attached to results may do good actions but secretly demand reward, praise, control, or recognition. A detached person can do the right thing because it is right. They can serve because service is sacred. They can work because work is their Dharma. They can love because love is natural. But they do not turn every action into a bargain with life. They do not say, "I acted well, so the universe must obey my exact desire." They say, "Let me act with purity. Let the result belong to the divine order." This is the wisdom of action without bondage. The soul continues to move through life, but each action becomes lighter because it is not soaked in ego demand. The person may plant seeds, but they do not scream at the sky every day because the fruit has not arrived. They may love someone, but they do not try to control the soul of that person. They may work hard, but they do not allow failure to destroy their worth. They may receive success, but they do not become arrogant because they know success too is passing. This balance is rare, and it is a sign of deep spiritual maturity. A soul close to moksha also begins to detach from mental noise. It notices how the mind creates stories, fears, fantasies, memories, arguments, and imaginary futures. Earlier, the person may have believed every thought. If the mind said, "You are nothing," they suffered. If the mind said, "You must prove yourself," they chased. If the mind said, "You cannot lose this person," they became desperate. But slowly, awareness becomes stronger. The person begins to see thoughts as movements in the mind, not commands from the soul. This inner distance is also detachment. When the soul is attached to thought, it lives in restlessness. When the soul witnesses thought, it begins to taste freedom. This is why silence becomes attractive to mature souls, not because they have nothing to say, but because they have heard enough noise inside and outside. Silence becomes a place of purification. In silence, the soul sees its attachments more clearly. It sees what it still fears. It sees what it still wants to control. It sees what still has power over its peace. And by seeing clearly, it begins to release. Detachment also brings a strange kind of courage. The person is no longer as easily manipulated by fear of loss. The world controls people through attachment. It says, "If you lose this, you are finished. If people leave you, you are nothing. If you fail, your life has no meaning. If you are not admired, you do not matter. If you are alone, you are incomplete." But a detached soul begins to smile at these illusions. It says, "I may lose things, but I will not lose the soul. I may be alone, but I am not empty. I may be forgotten by people, but I am not separated from truth. I may face change, but I am more than what changes." This is why detachment is freedom while still living. The person does not need to wait for death to experience a little liberation. Every released attachment is a small liberation. Every desire that loses control over the mind is a small liberation. Every fear that no longer rules the heart is a small liberation. Every person forgiven, every outcome surrendered, every ego demand dropped, every false identity released, every craving observed without obedience. These are all steps toward moksha. A soul far from moksha wants the world to become permanent so it can feel safe. A soul moving toward moksha accepts that the world is impermanent and finds safety in the eternal. A soul far from moksha says, "Give me what I want, then I will be peaceful." A soul near moksha says, "Let me become free from the demand that life must obey my every want." This is a complete change in consciousness. The first creates more karma. The second burns karma. This does not happen overnight. The soul may still struggle. It may still feel attachment. It may still cry when something dear leaves. It may still feel fear when life changes. It may still miss old people, old places, old dreams, and old versions of itself. But the difference is that the soul no longer worships attachment as truth. It sees attachment as a teacher. It feels the pain, but it does not build a temple around the pain. It allows grief to pass through, but it does not turn grief into identity. It allows love to remain, but it removes the chain from love. This is a powerful sign of nearing moksha, because the soul is slowly becoming free from the glue that binds it to repeated birth. The soul is not becoming empty, it is becoming spacious. It is making room for truth. It is making room for peace. It is making room for divine awareness. It is no longer filled with endless cravings and fears. It is no longer pulled in 100 directions by every desire. It begins to move toward one direction, liberation. As detachment deepens, gratitude also deepens. This may surprise many people, but true detachment does not make the soul ungrateful. It makes gratitude purer. When the person knows everything is temporary, they appreciate it more deeply. They can enjoy a moment without demanding that it last forever. They can love someone without trying to freeze them in time. They can receive blessings without becoming arrogant. They can look at life and say, "This too is a gift, and because it is a gift, I must not turn it into a prison." This is one of the most beautiful qualities of a soul close to moksha. It becomes gentle with life. It stops squeezing everything out of fear. It stops forcing what is leaving. It stops chasing what is not meant to stay. It stops fighting every change as if change is an enemy. It begins to walk with life, not against it. It begins to trust that whatever comes has a lesson, and whatever goes has completed its role. The person may still be active in the world, but inside there is less clinging. They may still have dreams, but less desperation. They may still have relationships, but less ownership. They may still experience pain, but less resistance. They may still live a full life, but with a heart that is slowly becoming free. This is the middle path of awakened detachment, not escaping life, not drowning in life, but walking through life with the soul awake. The Vedas reveal that the soul is eternal, while everything it clings to in the material world is temporary. When this truth is only heard, it becomes philosophy. When this truth is suffered, understood and lived, it becomes detachment. And when detachment becomes natural, the soul becomes light enough to move toward moksha. So if you feel that your heart no longer wants to cling the way it once did, if you feel peaceful when you release what you cannot control, if you are learning to love without losing yourself, if you are becoming less afraid of change, if you are tired of turning people and possessions into your identity, do not think your soul is becoming cold. Maybe your soul is becoming free. Maybe the chains that followed you through many lifetimes are finally weakening. Maybe the world is still present, but its grip on your consciousness is breaking. The fourth golden sign of a soul near moksha is this: the soul still lives among temporary things, but it no longer searches for eternity inside them. Lesson 5. The soul becomes more compassionate and less judgmental. The fifth sign that a soul is moving close to moksha is that compassion begins to become stronger than judgment. In the earlier stages of the soul's journey, a person looks at others from the surface and quickly decides who is good, who is bad, who is worthy, who is foolish, who is higher, who is lower, who deserves respect and who deserves rejection. But when the soul becomes mature through many lifetimes of pain, karma, mistakes, loss, attachment and awakening, it slowly begins to see human beings with deeper eyes. It no longer sees only behavior, it begins to see bondage. It no longer sees only mistakes, it begins to see ignorance. It no longer sees only cruelty, it begins to see suffering hidden behind cruelty. It no longer sees only weakness, it begins to see the unfinished journey of the soul. This does not mean that the awakened soul becomes blind to wrong actions. It does not mean the soul allows people to harm it. It does not mean the soul excuses betrayal, injustice, violence, manipulation, or repeated disrespect. True compassion is not weakness, and true spirituality is not foolishness. A soul close to moksha can still create boundaries, walk away from harmful people, protect its peace, speak truth, and refuse to participate in darkness. But the great difference is this: it does not need hatred to protect itself. It does not need revenge to feel strong. It does not need to destroy another soul in order to feel safe. It learns to step away with clarity, not with poison. The Vedas reveal that all beings are moving through the law of karma according to their own stage of consciousness. Some souls are still deeply asleep in desire. Some are trapped in anger. Some are blinded by pride. Some are consumed by fear. Some are lost in jealousy, some are addicted to control. Some are wounded so deeply that they hurt others without even understanding the fire they are spreading. A young soul looks at such people and says, they are evil, they are worthless, they deserve only hate. But a mature soul sees more deeply and says, this soul is still bound. This soul is still unconscious. This soul is still creating karma from ignorance. This vision does not remove responsibility, but it removes unnecessary hatred. When the soul is far from moksha, it enjoys judgment because judgment feeds the ego. The ego feels powerful when it can place others below itself. It says, I am better than them, I am wiser than them, I am purer than them, I would never fall like them, I would never make such mistakes. But life has a mysterious way of humbling every soul. Across many lifetimes, the soul has played many roles. It has been praised and blamed. It has been wise and foolish. It has been strong and weak. It has hurt others and been hurt by others. It has misunderstood and been misunderstood. It has desired things it later regretted. It has clung to illusions it later had to release. When this memory becomes wisdom, the soul stops standing above others with pride. This is why compassion is a sign of spiritual maturity. The compassionate soul understands that everyone is fighting a battle against their own ignorance. The angry person is not simply angry. They are often a prisoner of inner fire. The jealous person is not simply jealous. They are often suffering from comparison and emptiness. The greedy person is not simply greedy. They are often terrified of not having enough. The proud person is not simply proud. They are often hiding insecurity behind the mask of superiority. The cruel person is not simply cruel. They may be deeply disconnected from the divine presence within themselves. The awakened soul sees these layers, and because it sees the layers, its response becomes wiser. The soul close to moksha does not ask, how can I prove that I am better than others? It begins to ask, how can I remain pure while others are still learning? This is a very high question. It means the soul no longer wants to use the weakness of others as fuel for its own ego. It no longer wants to celebrate another person's fall. It no longer wants to gossip about people's darkness just to feel bright. It no longer wants to turn every mistake into a permanent identity. It understands that every soul is in motion, and what someone is today may not be what they become after the fire of karma, repentance, discipline, and awakening. Compassion also rises because the soul begins to see unity beneath difference. At the surface level, people appear separate, different bodies, different names, different families, different paths, different beliefs, different desires, different levels of wisdom. But the Vedic vision guides the soul to look deeper than the surface. Behind the body is consciousness. Behind the mind is the witness. Behind all temporary identities is the eternal essence. When the soul begins to see this, cruelty becomes difficult, arrogance becomes difficult, and unnecessary hatred becomes difficult. The person may still disagree, correct, and protect boundaries, but they do not forget that another living being is also moving through the mystery of existence. This is why some awakened souls become very gentle, but their gentleness should never be mistaken for weakness. Their compassion is not emotional softness without wisdom. It is the strength to see clearly without becoming hateful. It is the strength to understand someone's pain without allowing their pain to become permission for harm. It is the strength to forgive inwardly without always returning outwardly. It is the strength to wish peace for someone while still keeping distance from their chaos. This is rare because most people either become hard and judgmental or soft and easily broken. A soul close to moksha becomes soft in heart and strong in awareness. When a person is trapped in ego, they react to every mistake of others as a personal attack. If someone speaks harshly, they burn for days. If someone ignores them, they feel insulted. If someone disagrees, they feel threatened. If someone succeeds, they feel jealous. If someone fails, they feel secretly pleased. This shows that the ego is still using the world as a mirror for its own importance. But as the soul matures, it begins to respond from a deeper place. It thinks, this person's behavior belongs to their state of consciousness. My response belongs to mine. This understanding creates freedom. A soul near moksha becomes careful not to collect unnecessary karmic weight through reaction. It knows that when someone throws anger and we answer with anger, the chain continues. When someone acts from ignorance and we respond with ignorance, the darkness multiplies. When someone's bitterness enters our heart and becomes our bitterness, then their karma has touched our karma. The awakened soul does not want this. It wants to end the chain, not extend it. It wants to respond from Dharma, not from wounded pride. It wants to act with clarity, but without losing inner purity. This is one of the deepest forms of compassion, refusing to become like the pain that touched you. Many people suffer, and then they pass suffering forward. They are betrayed, so they become suspicious of everyone. They are rejected, so they reject others before others can reject them. They are humiliated, so they humiliate weaker people. They are controlled, so they become controlling. They are wounded, so they wound. But the soul close to moksha begins to break this pattern. It says, the pain may have entered my life, but I will not make it my nature. The wound may have taught me, but I will not worship the wound. I may have suffered, but I will not create more suffering in the world. This is why compassion is connected to liberation. Every time the soul chooses understanding over hatred, it becomes lighter. Every time it chooses forgiveness over revenge, it becomes lighter. Every time it chooses wise distance over bitter obsession, it becomes lighter. Every time it sees another being's ignorance without becoming arrogant, it becomes lighter. Hatred is heavy. Revenge is heavy, judgment is heavy, pride is heavy. The soul cannot move toward moksha while carrying the weight of hatred for every person who acted from darkness. But compassion does not mean the soul forgets discernment. This is important. Some people misunderstand spiritual compassion and think it means staying with toxic people, tolerating repeated harm, and calling self-destruction forgiveness. That is not Vedic wisdom. A mature soul understands that every being deserves compassion, but not every being deserves access to your life. You can understand someone's pain and still refuse their behavior. You can wish someone healing and still close the door. You can forgive the karmic debt within your heart and still protect your Dharma. Compassion without wisdom becomes weakness, but wisdom without compassion becomes hardness. A soul close to moksha carries both. As compassion grows, the soul becomes less interested in gossip. This is a powerful hidden sign. A person far from liberation enjoys speaking about the faults of others because it gives the ego a secret pleasure. It feels superior by exposing someone else. It feels entertained by drama. It feels important by carrying stories. But the soul that is awakening begins to feel uncomfortable with unnecessary criticism. It knows that words also create karma. It knows that spreading another person's weakness without purpose can darken the heart. It knows that every tongue can either become a tool of purification or a tool of bondage. So the mature soul becomes more careful with speech. The person may still speak truth when truth is needed. They may warn someone about danger. They may correct wrongdoing. They may discuss what must be discussed for protection, justice, or learning, but they no longer enjoy tearing people apart for entertainment. They no longer need to make someone else small in order to feel spiritually tall. They understand that every soul has hidden chapters that the world cannot see. This awareness makes their words more measured, their judgments more humble, and their silence more powerful. A soul close to moksha also begins to feel compassion for people who are still chasing the world. Earlier, it may have looked at worldly people with irritation or superiority. It may have thought, why are they so attached? Why are they so lost? Why do they care so much about status, beauty, money, attention, and pleasure? But as the soul becomes wiser, it remembers that it too has passed through stages of attachment. It too has desired temporary things. It too has mistaken glitter for gold. It too has suffered because of illusion. So instead of arrogance, it feels patience. It understands that awakening cannot be forced into a soul before its time. This is a very important Vedic understanding. Every soul ripens according to its own karma, effort, grace, and readiness. You cannot drag an unready soul into liberation by force. You can offer wisdom, you can live as an example, you can speak truth, you can serve with love, but you cannot awaken someone who still wants to sleep inside illusion. A soul close to moksha accepts this without bitterness. It stops trying to control everyone's path. It learns to guide where guidance is welcome, pray where change is not possible, and remain peaceful where another soul is not ready to understand. Compassion also appears as humility toward one's own journey. The soul no longer says, I am awakened and others are asleep, with pride. It says, whatever clarity I have received is a blessing, and I must protect it with humility. This humility is essential because spiritual pride is one of the last traps before freedom. A person may detach from money and still be attached to being seen as holy. A person may leave worldly pleasures and still desire spiritual importance. A person may speak about moksha and still be bound by the ego that says, I am closer than others. The truly maturing soul sees this danger and becomes humble. This humility makes compassion more authentic. The person does not help others from a throne of superiority. They help because they understand suffering. They do not guide others to be admired. They guide because truth has helped them, and they wish others to find light. They do not forgive to prove they are saintly. They forgive because carrying hatred burns the carrier first. They do not serve to become famous. They serve because service slowly dissolves the ego. This is the fragrance of a soul that is becoming free. A soul near moksha may begin to feel the pain of others more deeply, but not in a way that destroys it. In the beginning, sensitivity can become suffering because the person absorbs everything, but spiritual compassion is different from emotional drowning. The mature soul can feel another's pain and still remain centered in awareness. It can help without becoming controlled by the suffering it sees. It can love without becoming trapped. It can serve without becoming proud. It can cry for the world and still remain connected to the eternal. This balance is very advanced. This is why the great souls of the Vedic tradition are often described as compassionate, not because they are attached to the world, but because they see the divine presence within the world. They do not love beings because beings are perfect. They love because the same eternal truth shines behind all coverings. They understand that ignorance is a veil, not the final identity of the soul. They see the sinner and the saint as souls at different stages of awakening. They see the animal, the stranger, the enemy, the poor, the rich, the wise, and the foolish as travelers through the same cosmic law. This vision melts cruelty. When compassion becomes deep, the soul's relationship with justice also becomes purified. It no longer wants justice because the ego wants revenge. It wants justice because Dharma must be protected. It no longer wants wrongdoers corrected because it enjoys their humiliation. It wants correction because ignorance must not continue harming life. It no longer fights darkness with personal hatred. It acts from responsibility. This is a high state because action without hatred is difficult, but it is one of the signs that the soul is becoming free from lower reactions. The soul close to moksha also becomes compassionate toward itself. This is often forgotten. Many people think spirituality means being harsh with themselves forever, hating themselves for every mistake, and carrying guilt like a sacred duty. But the awakened soul understands that guilt can become another ego identity if it is not transformed. It learns from mistakes, accepts responsibility, purifies intention, corrects action, and moves forward. It does not use self-hatred as a path to freedom. Self-hatred is still bondage. A soul cannot awaken fully while constantly attacking the instrument through which it must practice Dharma. This self-compassion does not make the person careless. It makes them honest. They can admit, "I was wrong," without collapsing into shame. They can say, "I must change," without hating their existence. They can see their own ignorance without pretending to be beyond growth. They can recognize their wounds without making wounds their permanent identity. This creates a pure inner environment where transformation becomes possible. The soul becomes both responsible and gentle, disciplined and patient, serious about truth, but not cruel toward itself. As this compassion grows, the soul becomes less reactive to the differences between people. It no longer needs everyone to think the same, live the same, grow at the same speed, or understand the same truths. It sees that life is a vast school, and every soul is studying a different lesson. Some are learning through pleasure, some are learning through pain, some are learning through power, some are learning through loss, some are learning through love, some are learning through loneliness, some are learning through repeated mistakes, some are learning through silence. The mature soul respects the vastness of this divine classroom. This vision removes the restless need to judge every path. The person still follows Dharma. They still choose truth. They still avoid harmful actions, but they stop carrying the arrogance of thinking they can see the full karmic map of every being. They understand that only the divine order sees the entire chain of causes and effects. Human eyes see one chapter and make final conclusions, but karma may be moving through chapters beyond ordinary sight. This makes the soul careful, humble, and compassionate. A soul close to moksha also understands that forgiveness is not always a gift to the other person. Sometimes it is the release of one's own soul from the prison of memory. When the heart keeps replaying old wounds with anger, the person who caused the wound continues living inside the mind. The body may be in the present, but the consciousness remains tied to the past. The soul keeps feeding the same karmic knot with attention, emotion, and pain. Forgiveness in its deeper sense means cutting that knot within. It means saying, "I will take the lesson, but I will not keep drinking the poison." This inner forgiveness is very close to liberation because moksha requires the release of deep impressions. The soul cannot enter freedom while clinging to every insult, every betrayal, every loss, every humiliation, every injustice, and every old story as if these are its true identity. The soul must become vast enough to hold experience without becoming imprisoned by experience. Compassion helps this happen. It softens the hard knots of memory. It allows the heart to release what the ego wanted to keep as evidence. It turns wounds into wisdom. When compassion becomes strong, the person begins to serve naturally, not always in grand public ways, not always through visible spiritual acts, but through the way they speak, listen, forgive, guide, protect, and respond. Their presence becomes less harmful to the world. They do not add unnecessary fire to situations. They do not enjoy creating fear. They do not manipulate weaker people. They do not use knowledge to dominate. They do not use silence to punish. They do not use spirituality to shame others. Their being itself begins to carry a calmer vibration. This is the beauty of a soul nearing moksha. It becomes a place where others can breathe. It may not call itself holy, it may not announce itself as awakened, it may not even know how far it has come, but people may feel peace around it because it is no longer constantly projecting hunger, judgment, competition, and ego. Such a soul becomes like a quiet lamp. It does not scream that it has light, it simply shines, and whoever is ready can see. But the awakened soul must still be careful, because compassion can be tested. Life will bring difficult people. It will bring people who misunderstand kindness. It will bring people who take softness as weakness. It will bring people who return again and again with the same harmful patterns. This is where the soul must unite compassion with detachment. It must say, "I wish you peace, but I will not allow your unconsciousness to pull me back into bondage." This sentence itself is powerful. It carries kindness, boundary, wisdom, and freedom together. A soul near moksha does not want to create new enemies in the heart. It may have opponents in the world, but it does not want hatred to become its inner home. It may face criticism, but it does not want bitterness to become its identity. It may experience injustice, but it does not want revenge to become its religion. It knows that the final freedom cannot be reached while the mind is crowded with faces it hates and stories it refuses to release. So it practices the difficult art of remaining clear without becoming cruel. This is why compassion is not just a moral quality, it is a liberating force. Compassion dissolves the illusion of separateness. It weakens ego, it burns hatred, it reduces reactive karma, it purifies speech, it transforms relationships into opportunities for wisdom, it turns suffering into service, it makes the soul light. It helps the person see that the purpose of life is not only to become personally peaceful, but to stop being a source of suffering for other beings. The Vedas reveal that as ignorance fades, the soul naturally becomes more aligned with truth, non-harm, purity, self-control, patience, and compassion. These are not decorations for spirituality, they are signs that the soul's inner nature is becoming clearer. When muddy water becomes still, its natural clarity appears. In the same way, when the mind becomes less disturbed by ego, desire, anger, and fear, compassion begins to shine as a natural quality of the soul. So if you notice that you are becoming less judgmental than before, if you can see the pain behind people's behavior without allowing their behavior to control you, if you are learning to forgive without becoming foolish, if you are becoming careful with your words, if you no longer enjoy gossip the way you once did, if you can walk away from darkness without carrying hatred in your heart, then understand that something deep is changing within you. Your soul is not becoming weak, your soul is becoming refined. The fifth golden sign of a soul near moksha is this. It sees the bondage of others without becoming arrogant, it protects itself without becoming hateful, and it moves through the world with a heart that is wise enough to create boundaries and pure enough to still wish freedom for all beings. Lesson 6. The soul starts longing for truth more than comfort. The sixth sign that a soul is moving close to moksha is that it begins to love truth more than comfort. And this is one of the most difficult stages of awakening, because most people do not actually seek truth at first. They seek relief. They seek safety. They seek a story that protects their ego. They seek a belief that makes them feel special. They seek a path that gives them peace without demanding transformation. But a soul that has become mature through many lifetimes slowly reaches a point where it can no longer live inside sweet illusions, because the soul has suffered enough from falsehood to understand that comfort without truth is still bondage. In the early journey of the soul, comfort feels like the highest blessing. The person wants life to be smooth, relationships to be easy, desires to be fulfilled, respect to be constant, pain to disappear quickly, and every question to have an answer that makes the mind feel safe. If truth threatens this comfort, the mind avoids it. If truth exposes attachment, the mind denies it. If truth reveals ego, the mind becomes defensive. If truth asks for discipline, the mind searches for shortcuts. If truth demands surrender, the mind creates excuses. This is how the soul remains asleep, while thinking it is already awake. But when a soul begins moving closer to moksha, a sacred restlessness appears. The person may still live among ordinary people, still fulfill daily duties, still speak, work, eat, smile, and move through the world, but inside there is a fire that refuses to be satisfied by shallow answers. The soul begins asking questions that cannot be silenced by entertainment, wealth, praise, or routine. It asks, who am I beyond this body? What was I before this life? What continues after death? Why do the same patterns keep returning? What is karma trying to teach me? Why does every pleasure fade? Why does every attachment bring fear? What is the meaning of this life if everything here is temporary? These questions are not ordinary curiosity. They are the soul knocking from inside the prison of illusion. The Vedas reveal that ignorance is the root of bondage. As long as the soul mistakes the temporary for the eternal, the changing for the unchanging, the body for the self, the ego for identity, desire for happiness, and possession for security, it continues moving in the cycle of karma and rebirth. Ignorance does not only mean lack of information. Ignorance means seeing reality wrongly. A person may have knowledge of many things and still remain spiritually ignorant if they do not know the difference between the eternal soul and the temporary coverings around it. This is why truth becomes so important near moksha. The soul begins to understand that false comfort can keep it trapped for many lifetimes. A pleasant illusion may feel good for a moment, but it does not free the soul. A beautiful lie may protect the ego for a season, but it does not dissolve karma. A convenient belief may reduce fear temporarily, but if it does not bring the soul closer to reality, then it becomes another golden chain. The soul close to moksha does not want golden chains anymore. It wants freedom, even if freedom first burns through everything false. This is a very powerful shift. Earlier, the person may have asked life to protect their desires. Now they ask truth to purify their desires. Earlier, they may have wanted people to validate their identity. Now they want wisdom to reveal what is false in that identity. Earlier, they may have feared pain because pain disturbed comfort. Now they begin to see that some pain removes blindness. Earlier, they may have wanted answers that made the ego feel strong. Now they want answers that make the soul free. Truth is not always gentle in the beginning. Sometimes truth enters like a flame. It shows the person where they were attached, while calling it love. It shows where they were afraid, while calling it wisdom. It shows where they were proud, while calling it self-respect. It shows where they were controlling, while calling it care. It shows where they were escaping themselves, while calling it peace. It shows where they were repeating karma, while blaming destiny. The mind may resist this, but the soul close to moksha knows that the pain of truth is cleaner than the comfort of illusion. This is why many people turn away when real wisdom begins. They may enjoy spiritual words, beautiful quotes, ancient stories, and sacred ideas, but when wisdom asks them to change their life, purify their intention, control their senses, release an attachment, forgive a wound, discipline the mind, or surrender the ego, they step back. They wanted decoration, not transformation. They wanted spiritual identity, not spiritual death of the false self. But a soul near moksha cannot stop at decoration. It wants the real path, even when the real path is sharp. The longing for truth often makes the soul feel lonely because truth separates the person from many illusions that society worships. When everyone is chasing attention, the truth-seeking soul asks why attention matters so much. When everyone is competing for status, the truth-seeking soul asks what status means after death. When everyone is drowning in gossip, the truth-seeking soul feels the weight of wasted speech. When everyone is running behind temporary pleasure, the truth-seeking soul begins wondering why human life is spent collecting things that must be left behind. This loneliness is not always a curse. Sometimes it is the sacred space where the soul becomes strong enough to hear its own higher calling. A soul close to moksha begins to lose interest in shallow living, not because it hates people, but because it has started hearing a deeper sound within existence. It may no longer enjoy endless arguments, empty entertainment, constant comparison, social performance, fake relationships, and conversations that only feed ego and desire. It may sit among people and still feel far away because its heart is searching for something most people are not ready to discuss. This can be painful, but it is also a sign that the soul is being pulled inward toward truth. The Vedic path teaches that the senses pull the mind outward, while wisdom pulls the soul inward. The eyes run toward forms, the ears run toward sounds, the tongue runs toward taste, the skin runs toward touch, and the mind runs toward memory and imagination. This outward movement creates endless distraction. The soul becomes so busy experiencing the world that it forgets to inquire into the experiencer. But when the longing for truth becomes strong, the direction changes. The soul begins to turn toward the witness, toward the source, toward the eternal reality behind changing appearances. This inward turn is not easy because the mind is addicted to distraction. The mind would rather scroll through noise than sit in silence. It would rather judge others than observe itself. It would rather chase future pleasure than examine present bondage. It would rather replay old pain than release identity. It would rather collect spiritual information than practice spiritual discipline. A soul far from moksha follows the mind blindly. A soul nearing moksha begins to question the mind itself. This questioning is sacred. The person begins to ask, is this thought true? Or is it only fear? Is this desire pure? Or is it only craving? Is this love free? Or is it attachment? Is this action Dharma? Or is it ego? Is this pain teaching me? Or am I turning it into identity? Is this relationship helping my soul grow? Or keeping me bound to the same karmic pattern? These questions slowly purify consciousness. They create distance between awareness and reaction. They make the person less mechanical and more awake. When truth becomes more important than comfort, the soul becomes willing to see its own darkness. This is a rare courage because many people can easily point out the faults of others, but they tremble when they must face their own. They can see another person's pride, but not their own pride. They can see another person's attachment, but not their own dependency. They can see another person's anger, but not their own hidden resentment. They can see another person's ignorance, but not their own spiritual arrogance. A soul close to moksha begins to pray for the courage to see itself clearly, because it knows that what remains unseen cannot be purified. This self-seeing can feel painful, but it is one of the greatest blessings. When the soul sees its jealousy, it can transform jealousy into self-awareness. When it sees its fear, it can transform fear into surrender. When it sees its attachment, it can transform attachment into detachment. When it sees its ego, it can transform ego into humility. When it sees its repeated karmic patterns, it can finally stop feeding them. The truth that exposes the wound also gives the soul a chance to heal the wound. The soul close to moksha begins to understand that spiritual life is not about pretending to be pure. It is about becoming honest enough to be purified. Pretending creates another mask. Honesty opens the door to liberation. The person no longer needs to appear perfect in front of others. They are more concerned with becoming real before truth. They may quietly admit, there is still anger in me, there is still pride in me, there is still attachment in me, there is still fear in me, there is still desire in me. This admission is not failure. It is the beginning of real transformation. Many people remain trapped because they confuse comfort with peace. Comfort depends on conditions. Peace comes from alignment with truth. Comfort says, let life go my way so I can feel calm. Peace says, let me become rooted in truth so I remain steady even when life changes. Comfort says, protect my ego from pain. Peace says, free my soul from ego. Comfort says, give me what I want. Peace says, teach me what I must understand. A soul close to moksha begins choosing peace over comfort, and this choice changes the direction of destiny. This is why truth-seeking souls often go through deep inner purification. Life may remove false supports. It may break illusions. It may show them the emptiness of what they once worshipped. It may bring silence where there was noise, solitude where there was dependency, loss where there was attachment, and humility where there was pride. From the outside, this may look like suffering, but from the soul's perspective, it can be a divine clearing. The soul is being prepared to stand on truth alone. The Vedas reveal that the path to liberation requires discrimination between the real and the unreal. The real is that which does not perish. The unreal is that which appears, changes, and disappears. The body is experienced, but it changes. The mind is experienced, but it changes. Emotions are experienced, but they change. Possessions are experienced, but they change. Relationships are experienced, but their outer forms change. Roles and reputations change. Even memories change. So the soul begins to ask, what remains unchanged behind all change? This question is a doorway. A soul far from moksha is afraid of this question because it threatens every false identity. But a soul close to moksha is drawn to it like a traveler drawn to home. It wants to know the witness behind experience. It wants to know the eternal essence behind temporary forms. It wants to know the truth that death cannot destroy. It wants to know the freedom that desire cannot purchase. It wants to know the self that existed before society gave it a name and will continue after the name is forgotten. This longing changes the person's relationship with sacred knowledge. They no longer approach wisdom only for entertainment or intellectual pride. They approach it like medicine. They listen carefully because they are not merely collecting ideas, they are searching for liberation. A single sentence of truth may enter their heart and change the way they see life. A verse, a teaching, a silence, a moment of deep reflection may awaken something that was sleeping across many births. This is because the soul was ready. The same wisdom that sounds ordinary to one person becomes life-changing to another, because readiness is different. The soul close to moksha becomes careful about what it allows into the mind. It understands that impressions shape consciousness. Every image, every conversation, every desire, every fear, every repeated thought, every environment leaves a subtle mark. A person seeking comfort may consume anything that distracts them, but a person seeking truth begins to ask whether something makes the mind clearer or darker, calmer or more restless, freer or more attached. This does not come from fear of the world. It comes from respect for the inner path. Such a soul may begin to choose silence over noise, scripture over gossip, reflection over reaction, discipline over indulgence, solitude over shallow company, and truth over popularity. These choices may not always look exciting from the outside, but inside they create space for awakening. The soul begins to protect its consciousness because it knows the mind is the field where bondage and freedom both grow. If the mind is constantly filled with desire, anger, comparison, and illusion, the soul remains covered. If the mind becomes purified, truth shines more naturally. A soul moving toward moksha also becomes less afraid of losing people who are attached to its false self. This is difficult because when a person begins loving truth, not everyone can walk with them. Some people only liked the version of them that was easy to control. Some only liked the version that tolerated everything. Some only liked the version that joined in illusion. Some only liked the version that never questioned anything. When the soul begins to change, those bonds may weaken. But the truth-seeking soul slowly accepts that losing false approval is not a real loss if it brings the soul closer to freedom. This is one of the hidden tests of truth. Will you still choose truth when it costs comfort, image, belonging, and easy praise? Many people love truth when truth supports their desires, but they reject truth when truth corrects them. Many people love wisdom when it can be used against others, but they resist wisdom when it points inward. Many people love spirituality when it gives identity, but not when it dissolves identity. The soul close to moksha begins to pass this test by bowing before truth even when the ego trembles. The person may not become perfect immediately, but their direction becomes clear. They may still fall into old habits, but they return to awareness faster. They may still feel desire, but they question desire more deeply. They may still feel ego, but they recognize ego more quickly. They may still feel fear, but they bring fear into the light of inquiry. They may still feel attachment, but they no longer call attachment freedom. This honesty is itself a sign of progress. Truth also changes the soul's relationship with death. A comfort-seeking mind avoids death because death destroys the illusion of permanence, but a truth-seeking soul contemplates death not to become dark or hopeless, but to become awake. It understands that death is the great mirror. It shows what was real and what was borrowed. It shows what can be carried and what must be left behind. Wealth is left, body is left, status is left, praise is left, enemies are left, houses are left, titles are left. What travels is karma, impressions, consciousness, and the soul's level of awakening. When this becomes clear, life becomes more serious and more sacred. A soul close to moksha does not use death as fear. It uses death as wisdom. It asks, if I must leave everything one day, why should I sell my soul for temporary things? If this body is passing, why should I live only for bodily pleasure? If people's opinions die with time, why should I build my whole identity on approval? If karma follows me beyond this life, why should I act carelessly? If liberation is possible, why should I remain asleep? These questions bring power. They remove laziness from the soul. They make every day an opportunity for purification. The longing for truth also purifies devotion. In the beginning, devotion may be mixed with desire. A person may pray only for success, protection, relationship, wealth, victory, or relief from pain. This is still a beginning, and it has value. But as the soul matures, devotion becomes deeper. The prayer changes from "give me what I want" to "show me what is true." It changes from "make life comfortable" to "make my heart pure." It changes from "remove every difficulty" to "give me wisdom to pass through difficulty without losing the path." This is devotion moving toward liberation. Such a soul begins to understand that the highest blessing is not always the fulfillment of desire. Sometimes the highest blessing is the destruction of the desire that kept the soul bound. Sometimes grace comes as removal. Sometimes grace comes as delay. Sometimes grace comes as disappointment. Sometimes grace comes as solitude. Sometimes grace comes as a painful truth that saves the soul from a beautiful illusion. Only a truth-loving soul can understand this deeply. This is why the sixth sign is so powerful. A soul close to moksha no longer measures life only by comfort. It measures life by awakening. It does not ask only, "Did this make me happy?" It asks, "Did this make me more aware?" It does not ask only, "Did I get what I wanted?" It asks, "Did I become less bound?" It does not ask only, "Did people approve of me?" It asks, "Did I remain aligned with truth?" This shift shows that the soul is no longer living only for the mind's satisfaction. It is living for liberation. The world may not understand such a soul. The world may call it too serious, too deep, too quiet, too detached, too different, too difficult to impress. But the soul is not trying to impress the world anymore. It is trying to return to reality. It is trying to become free from the ignorance that has carried it through lifetimes. It is trying to stop repeating the same desires under different names. It is trying to find the eternal truth that was hidden behind every temporary experience. When a soul longs for truth more than comfort, its life becomes an offering. Every relationship becomes a mirror. Every pain becomes a teacher. Every temptation becomes a test. Every silence becomes a doorway. Every breath becomes a reminder that time is passing, and awakening must not be delayed. Such a person may still live outwardly like others, but inwardly they are walking toward a different destination. They are no longer collecting only experiences. They are collecting wisdom. They are no longer asking life to entertain them. They are asking life to liberate them. This longing is not created by the mind alone. It rises from the depth of the soul when the soul has completed enough of the lower lessons and begins to remember its higher purpose. The pleasures of the world may still appear, but they do not shine in the same way. The praise of people may still come, but it does not intoxicate in the same way. The old fears may still arise, but they do not command in the same way. Something deeper has awakened, and once the soul has tasted the hunger for truth, ordinary comfort can never fully satisfy it again. So if you feel that easy answers no longer satisfy you, if you feel that your heart is searching for something beyond success and survival, if you feel that life keeps pushing you to face yourself more honestly, if you feel drawn towards silence, scripture, wisdom, self-inquiry, and the mystery of the soul, do not think you are losing interest in life. Maybe you are losing interest in illusion. Maybe your soul has lived enough through comfort to know that comfort is not freedom. Maybe your soul is ready for the truth that burns, heals, purifies, and finally liberates. The sixth golden sign of a soul near moksha is this: it no longer begs life only for comfort. It asks truth to awaken it. Even if awakening first breaks every illusion the ego once called home. Lesson 7. The soul begins to surrender completely. The seventh and deepest sign that a soul is moving close to moksha is that surrender begins to awaken within it, not as weakness, not as defeat, not as hopelessness, but as the highest wisdom of a soul that has finally understood the limits of ego, desire, fear, control, and personal will. In the earlier stages of the journey, the soul lives as if everything depends on the small self. It believes, I must control everything, I must force every result, I must hold every person, I must protect every image, I must make life obey my plans, and if something goes against my desire, then life has betrayed me. But after many lifetimes of chasing, losing, gaining, suffering, loving, clinging, resisting, and beginning again, the soul slowly discovers that the ego cannot carry the weight of existence. This is where surrender begins. Surrender is not giving up on life. Surrender is giving up the illusion that the ego is the master of life. It does not mean the person becomes lazy, passive, silent in the face of wrong, or careless about duty. True Vedic surrender means doing what must be done with sincerity, purity, courage, and discipline, while releasing the burning demand that every result must happen exactly according to personal desire. It means acting with Dharma, but not drowning in anxiety over the fruit of action. It means loving deeply, but not trying to imprison another soul. It means planning wisely, but not worshipping the plan as if the universe must obey the mind. It means accepting that the individual vision is limited, while the divine order is vast beyond ordinary understanding. A soul far from moksha tries to control life because it is afraid. It is afraid of loss, afraid of rejection, afraid of failure, afraid of death, afraid of loneliness, afraid of uncertainty, afraid of not being seen, afraid of not being loved, afraid of not becoming what it imagined. So it tightens its grip on everything. It grips people, possessions, beliefs, memories, identity, future, and even spiritual progress. But the tighter the soul grips, the heavier the bondage becomes. Control may appear to give safety for a moment, but it also creates constant fear, because whatever the ego controls, it is also afraid to lose. A soul close to moksha begins to see that this fear-based control is one of the deepest chains. It remembers that many things it desperately wanted did not bring lasting peace. It remembers that many things it feared losing were lost, and still the soul survived. It remembers that many doors that closed were later understood as protection. It remembers that many desires fulfilled became new attachments, and many desires denied became hidden blessings. Slowly, the soul begins to trust that life is not always understood from the surface. Karma, Dharma, divine timing, and inner evolution move through layers that the ordinary mind cannot fully see. This trust is not blind fantasy. It is born from experience. The soul has seen enough to know that the mind often mistakes poison for nectar and medicine for punishment. The mind cries when an attachment is taken away, but the soul later realizes that attachment was a chain. The mind becomes angry when a desire is delayed, but the soul later realizes the delay was teaching patience, humility, or redirection. The mind feels defeated when a path collapses, but the soul later sees that the collapse prevented deeper bondage. This is why surrender grows slowly in mature souls. It grows from the recognition that the ego has been wrong many times. In the beginning, the person says, "Why did this happen to me?" Later, the person says, "What is this teaching me?" But near moksha, the person begins to say, "Let truth guide me through this." This is a higher state. It does not deny pain. It does not pretend suffering is sweet. It does not force a smile while the heart is bleeding. It simply refuses to let pain become rebellion against the deepest truth. The surrendered soul may cry, but it does not curse existence. It may feel fear, but it does not let fear become its god. It may face loss, but it does not allow loss to erase its faith in the eternal. The Vedas reveal that bondage continues as long as the soul acts from ignorance, desire, and egoic ownership. The ego says, "I am the doer, I am the controller, I am the owner, I am the enjoyer, I am the sufferer, everything is mine, everything must serve me." This false sense of doership creates deep karma because the soul becomes attached to action and result. It identifies with success and failure, praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain. It becomes trapped in the wheel because it keeps saying, "I did, I won, I lost, I deserve, I was denied, I must repeat, I must complete, I must become." Surrender begins to dissolve this false doership. The person still acts, but the inner attitude changes. Instead of saying, "I alone am the master of everything," the soul begins to understand, "I am an instrument moving within a greater law." This does not make the person powerless, it makes the person pure. When the ego owns action, action becomes heavy. When action is offered to the highest truth, action becomes lighter. The person can work hard without arrogance, serve without pride, love without possession, suffer without hatred, and succeed without forgetting humility. This is one of the most sacred transformations before moksha. A soul near liberation becomes less obsessed with controlling outer life and more devoted to purifying inner life. Earlier, it wanted the world to change so it could be peaceful. Now it wants the heart to awaken so it can remain peaceful even when the world changes. Earlier, it wanted every person to behave according to its expectations. Now it wants to respond to every person according to Dharma. Earlier, it wanted every situation to confirm its ego. Now it wants every situation to free it from ego. This is surrender becoming alive. The surrendered soul begins to understand that life is not only a place to fulfill desires, life is a field where the soul is purified. Every relationship, every loss, every gain, every delay, every insult, every temptation, every silence, every ending, and every new beginning is part of the soul's education. When the soul sees life this way, resistance begins to soften. The person stops fighting reality every moment. It does not mean they accept injustice or stop making effort. It means they stop creating inner war against every event that does not match the ego's preference. This inner war is one of the greatest sources of suffering. Pain may come from outside, but suffering increases when the mind says, "This should not be happening. My life should be different. People should be different. The past should be different. Destiny should obey me." A soul close to moksha begins to see that resistance multiplies pain. Acceptance does not always remove the difficulty, but it removes the second wound created by mental rebellion. From that calmer place, the person can act more wisely. They can protect themselves, correct what can be corrected, release what cannot be controlled, and move with clarity instead of panic. Surrender also changes the soul's relationship with time. The ego is always impatient because desire wants immediate fulfillment. It says, "Why not now? Why not my way? Why is this delayed? Why is life not moving according to my schedule?" But the surrendered soul begins to recognize that spiritual ripening cannot be forced. A fruit does not become sweet by being pulled from the branch too early. A seed does not become a tree because someone screams at the soil. A soul does not become liberated because the ego demands instant enlightenment. Everything has a rhythm, and surrender is learning to move with the rhythm of truth rather than the impatience of desire. This is why a soul close to moksha may become quieter with age or experience. It no longer feels the same need to argue with every delay. It no longer panics when life pauses. It no longer believes that silence means abandonment. It begins to understand that some waiting periods are not empty, they are purifying. Some delays are not denials, they are protections. Some unanswered prayers are not rejections, they are invitations to grow beyond the desire that shaped the prayer. The surrendered soul becomes less demanding and more listening. But surrender is tested most deeply when life removes what the ego loves. Anyone can speak of surrender when life is comfortable. Anyone can say, "I trust the divine order," when every desire is fulfilled and every path is smooth. Real surrender begins when the soul stands before loss and still refuses to collapse into hatred. Real surrender begins when a relationship ends and the soul says, "Let me learn without becoming bitter." Real surrender begins when a dream breaks and the soul says, "Let me continue without losing faith." Real surrender begins when the body weakens, when people misunderstand, when effort seems unseen, when the result does not match the sacrifice, and still the soul chooses truth over rebellion. This is not easy. A soul near moksha may still tremble, it may still cry in the night. It may still feel the ache of separation, the sting of disappointment, the heaviness of uncertainty, and the silence after prayer. But there is a difference between pain and spiritual collapse. The surrendered soul may suffer, but it does not turn suffering into a reason to abandon the path. It says, "Even this must become part of my awakening." This sentence shows great maturity because it transforms pain from an enemy into a doorway. The Vedas reveal that desires bind the soul to birth because desire creates movement toward experience. Whatever the soul deeply craves, fears, hates, regrets, or clings to can become a thread pulling it back into the field of karma. The surrendered soul begins to cut these threads one by one. It does not cut them through violence against life, but through wisdom. It says, "I will not allow desire to command me like a king. I will not allow fear to become my guide. I will not allow regret to keep me tied to the past. I will not allow hatred to keep another person living inside my mind. I will not allow longing to decide my next birth." This is why surrender is close to moksha. Moksha is freedom from bondage, and surrender dissolves the deepest roots of bondage. Desire says, "I must have." Surrender says, "Let me be free even if I do not have." Fear says, "I cannot lose." Surrender says, "Let me remain rooted even if change comes." Ego says, "I must be seen." Surrender says, "Let truth see me." Pride says, "I am the doer." Surrender says, "Let this action become an offering." Attachment says, "This is mine forever." Surrender says, "Everything was given for a time, and everything belongs to the eternal." A soul far from moksha thinks surrender means losing power. But the soul close to moksha discovers that surrender is the doorway to a higher power. When the ego stops screaming, intuition becomes clearer. When desire becomes quieter, wisdom becomes stronger. When fear loses its throne, the heart becomes steadier. When control softens, life can be seen more honestly. The person no longer wastes so much energy forcing, resisting, pretending, and defending. That energy turns inward and becomes awareness. This awareness allows the soul to recognize what is truly in its hands and what is not. It can choose intention, but not always outcome. It can choose effort, but not always timing. It can choose honesty, but not always how others respond. It can choose love, but not always whether love is returned. It can choose discipline, but not always the speed of success. It can choose forgiveness, but not always reconciliation. It can choose Dharma, but not always comfort. The surrendered soul stops suffering over the part that was never under its control and begins giving full sincerity to the part that is. This is a very powerful liberation while still alive. Many people spend their lives exhausted because they try to control other people's minds, other people's choices, other people's opinions, the past, the future, aging, death, timing, destiny, and every invisible movement of karma. But the surrendered soul begins to return to the present duty. It asks, what is the right action now? What is the pure intention now? What is the wise response now? What must be released now? What must be offered now? This brings the soul back from imagination into Dharma. Surrender also purifies devotion. In the early stage, devotion may still be mixed with bargaining. The person says, I will pray if my wish is granted. I will believe if my pain is removed. I will surrender if life proves that it is kind to me in the way I expect. This is not wrong as a beginning, but it is not complete surrender. Near moksha, devotion becomes less like a bargain and more like union. The soul begins to say, let me not remember the divine only when I need something. Let me remember truth because truth is my home. Let me not worship only for comfort. Let me worship because the ego must melt. This melting is the heart of surrender. The ego wants to remain separate and important. It wants to stand before existence and demand special treatment, but surrender slowly melts the hardness of separateness. The person begins to feel, I am not here only to satisfy personal desire. I am here to awaken, to purify, to serve, to love, to learn, and to return. This feeling makes life sacred. Ordinary actions become offerings. Speech becomes more careful. Work becomes more sincere. Relationships become more conscious. Solitude becomes more meaningful. Even suffering becomes material for transformation. A soul close to moksha begins to surrender not only painful things, but also beautiful things. This is a deep point. Many people are willing to surrender pain, but not pleasure. They say, take away my suffering, but they cling tightly to praise, comfort, status, attachment, and desire. The surrendered soul learns to offer both pain and pleasure. When happiness comes, it does not become drunk with ownership. When success comes, it does not become arrogant. When love comes, it does not become possessive. When blessings come, it receives them with gratitude and remembers that they are not permanent possessions. This keeps the soul light. The real test is not only whether the soul can survive loss, it is whether the soul can receive gain without becoming bound again. Sometimes suffering pushes the soul toward truth, but pleasure pulls it back into sleep. The soul close to moksha becomes alert even in happiness. It says, let me enjoy this blessing without forgetting the eternal. Let me love this person without making them my prison. Let me accept success without feeding pride. Let me receive comfort without becoming spiritually lazy. This balanced awareness is rare, and it shows that surrender has become mature. Surrender also changes how the soul handles memory. The ego clings to the past because the past gives it identity. It keeps old wounds, old victories, old insults, old loves, old failures, old humiliations, and old dreams alive, because without them it does not know who it is. But the soul close to moksha begins to release the need to keep repeating the past. It understands that memory should become wisdom, not a cage. It does not deny what happened, but it stops worshipping what happened. It takes the lesson and releases the chain. This is important because many souls remain bound not only by current desire, but by old impressions. A person may physically move forward while internally living inside something that ended years ago. A relationship may be gone, but attachment remains. A wound may be old, but anger remains. A failure may be past, but shame remains. A success may be past, but pride remains. These subtle impressions become seeds of future karma. Surrender begins to burn these seeds by saying, I release the identity that was built around this memory. Let the lesson remain, but let the bondage end. A surrendered soul becomes less interested in asking, why did my story not happen exactly as I wanted? And more interested in asking, how can this story become a path to freedom? This question transforms the entire meaning of life. The person no longer sees themselves as a victim of every change. They see themselves as a soul passing through lessons. They no longer measure life only by how much they received. They measure it by how much ignorance was removed. They no longer ask only how many people loved them. They ask how deeply they learned to love without possession. They no longer ask only how much they achieved. They ask how much ego was purified through action. Near moksha, surrender becomes visible in small daily moments. It appears when the person does not react to every insult. It appears when they do their duty without needing applause. It appears when they accept a delay without losing inner balance. It appears when they let someone misunderstand them instead of spending endless energy defending an ego image. It appears when they release a desire that is clearly becoming destructive. It appears when they forgive inwardly, even if they do not return outwardly. It appears when they choose peace instead of proving a point. It appears when they say, "This is not in my control, but my response is." These small moments are not small for the soul. Every surrendered moment weakens the ego. Every surrendered response burns a little karma. Every surrendered desire releases a thread from the heart. Every surrendered fear gives space to trust. Every surrendered outcome teaches the soul that it can exist without constant control. This is how liberation approaches, not only through one dramatic spiritual experience, but through thousands of quiet victories over the false self. A soul close to moksha also surrenders the need to be understood by everyone. This is a very high form of freedom. Many people suffer because they want every person to understand their intention, their pain, their growth, their silence, their boundaries, and their inner journey. But not every soul can understand every stage. Some people will judge your detachment as coldness. Some will judge your silence as pride. Some will judge your boundaries as cruelty. Some will judge your surrender as weakness. Some will judge your change because they benefited from your old bondage. The surrendered soul learns that being true is more important than being understood by everyone. This does not mean the person becomes arrogant or refuses communication. It means they stop making their peace dependent on universal approval. They explain where explanation is useful. They remain silent where explanation only feeds drama. They correct what must be corrected. They release what cannot be changed. They understand that the divine witness sees what human eyes may miss. This gives the soul a dignity that does not require constant defense. Surrender also brings a deep peace around death. A soul far from moksha fears death because it sees death as the destruction of everything it believes itself to be. The body, the name, the possessions, the relationships, the social image, the unfinished desires, the familiar world, all appear to be threatened by death. But a soul close to moksha begins to contemplate death as a doorway, not with careless desire to die, but with spiritual seriousness. It asks, what will remain when the body falls? What have I purified? What attachments still bind me? What desires still pull me? What truth have I realized? What karma have I created? What have I offered back? This contemplation makes surrender urgent and sacred. The person understands that nothing material can be carried beyond death in the same form. The body stays, wealth stays, applause stays, arguments stay, houses stay, titles stay. What follows is the state of consciousness, the force of karma, the impressions of desire, and the level of awakening. When this becomes real, surrender becomes natural. The soul says, why should I cling so tightly to what I must leave? Why should I sell my inner freedom for things that cannot cross the final threshold with me? This does not make life meaningless. It makes life more meaningful. If everything temporary must one day be left behind, then each moment should be lived with purity, awareness, gratitude, and devotion. Each relationship should be used for love, growth, and forgiveness, not bondage and control. Each challenge should be used for awakening, not bitterness. Each success should be used for service, not arrogance. Each breath should become a reminder that the soul is traveling, and the destination is not endless wandering but freedom. A surrendered soul begins to live with this awareness. It does not postpone awakening forever. It does not say, I will seek truth when I am old. I will release ego later. I will forgive later. I will practice detachment later. I will purify my actions later. It knows that later is not guaranteed. The body is temporary, time is moving, karma is being created, and the mind can become more bound if it is not purified now. Surrender gives urgency without panic. It says, let this life become useful for liberation. One of the most beautiful signs of surrender is that the soul stops fighting the disappearance of old versions of itself. Many people cling to who they used to be because the old self feels familiar, even if it was painful. They cling to old desires, old relationships, old identities, old ambitions, old wounds, and old ways of being seen. But the soul close to moksha allows old identities to die. It says, if this version of me was built from ignorance, let it fall. If this desire was built from bondage, let it fade. If this attachment was blocking truth, let it loosen. If this pride was hiding fear, let it be exposed. If this life is asking me to become more real, let the false become ashes. This is not easy because the ego experiences transformation as death. When pride is dissolving, the ego feels humiliated. When attachment is dissolving, the ego feels abandoned. When desire is dissolving, the ego feels empty. When control is dissolving, the ego feels unsafe. But the soul behind the ego begins to feel lighter. What the ego calls loss, the soul may experience as space. What the ego calls emptiness, the soul may experience as freedom. What the ego calls defeat, the soul may experience as surrender. This is why many spiritually mature people pass through periods where life becomes quieter, simpler, and more inward. They are not losing life. They are losing unnecessary noise. They are not becoming empty. They are becoming spacious enough for truth. They are not becoming weak. They are becoming less controlled by the need to appear strong. They are not becoming disconnected. They are becoming connected to something deeper than constant external stimulation. Surrender also makes prayer deeper. The prayer of a surrendered soul is not only, give me this, it becomes, make me pure enough to receive what is right, strong enough to release what is not mine, wise enough to understand what life is teaching, and humble enough to trust what I cannot yet see. This prayer carries maturity. It does not use the divine as a servant of desire. It opens the soul as a servant of truth. As surrender deepens, the person may begin to experience a quiet inner sweetness that does not depend on outer victory. This sweetness is difficult to explain because it is not excitement, not pleasure, not pride, not emotional intoxication. It is a silent relief that comes when the soul stops carrying what was never meant to be carried. It is the peace of putting down the burden of constant control. It is the softness that comes when life is no longer treated as an enemy. It is the dignity of knowing, I will act sincerely, but I will not destroy myself over the result. This peace is one of the fragrances of liberation. It does not mean the soul has fully reached moksha, but it shows the direction is right. The knots are loosening, the hunger is weakening, the fear is softening, the ego is becoming transparent, the heart is learning to trust. The soul is remembering that it belongs not to the restless world of passing forms, but to the eternal truth beyond birth and death. A soul close to moksha surrenders even spiritual ambition. This is very subtle. In the beginning, the person may desire moksha as another achievement. The ego may say, I want to be liberated, I want to be advanced, I want to be seen as wise, I want to be close to the final truth. But eventually, surrender purifies even this. The soul begins to understand that moksha is not a trophy for the ego. Liberation is the dissolving of the ego that wants trophies. So the person stops turning spirituality into competition. They stop comparing their awakening with others. They stop declaring themselves higher. They simply walk the path with humility. This humility protects the soul near the final door. Spiritual pride can pull a person backward even after great progress. The thought, I am close to moksha, can become another chain if it creates superiority. The surrendered soul does not boast about its nearness. It becomes more careful, more sincere, more compassionate, more silent, more devoted. It knows that the closer one comes to truth, the less space there is for arrogance. A river does not shout when it reaches the ocean, it simply merges. This merging is the mystery behind surrender. The individual self that spent lifetimes trying to stand separate finally begins to bow into the greater reality. The soul stops asking, "How can existence serve my desire?" and begins asking, "How can this life become an offering to truth?" The person stops treating every event as personal punishment or personal reward and starts seeing life as movement within a vast divine law. The heart becomes less contracted, the mind becomes less violent, the actions become cleaner, the speech becomes more careful, the presence becomes more peaceful. The world may still test such a soul. Karma may still unfold. Old impressions may still rise. The body may still experience pain. Relationships may still change. Responsibilities may still remain. But something essential has shifted. The person is no longer as easily pulled into the old machinery of reaction. They may feel anger, but awareness arrives sooner. They may feel attachment, but wisdom speaks louder. They may feel fear, but surrender holds them. They may feel grief, but grief does not become the whole identity. This is not perfection, it is liberation beginning within life. The surrendered soul learns to say yes to what is, not because everything is pleasant, but because fighting reality blindly creates more bondage. From that yes, it takes wise action. It does not confuse surrender with helplessness. If there is injustice, it acts according to Dharma. If there is danger, it protects life. If there is duty, it fulfills duty. If there is error, it corrects error. But inwardly, it does not act from hatred, panic, or egoic obsession. It acts as an offering, and this makes action pure. This is the final ripening of many previous lessons. The soul that became tired of temporary pleasures is now ready to surrender desire. The soul that saw karma as a teacher is now ready to surrender complaint. The soul that lost interest in ego identity is now ready to surrender false self. The soul that felt natural detachment is now ready to surrender possession. The soul that became compassionate is now ready to surrender hatred. The soul that longed for truth more than comfort is now ready to surrender illusion. All these streams meet in the ocean of surrender. When surrender becomes complete, the roots of rebirth begin to dry. Desire no longer pulls with the same force. Fear no longer commands with the same authority. Ego no longer creates the same thick identity. Attachment no longer binds the heart with the same tight knot. Karma may still finish its movement, but the soul is no longer creating the same chains with the same unconsciousness. This is why surrender is so close to moksha. It is the soul preparing to stop wandering. The soul near moksha begins to live like a guest in the world, not like a prisoner of the world. A guest appreciates the house but knows it is not the final home. A guest uses what is given but does not claim ownership forever. A guest behaves with gratitude and awareness. In the same way, the surrendered soul lives in the body, works in the world, loves people, fulfills duties, and receives experiences, but it remembers that the final home is not in changing forms. The final home is in the eternal truth. This remembrance changes everything. The person no longer wastes life fighting for things that cannot truly satisfy the soul. They no longer sacrifice inner freedom for temporary approval. They no longer create new karma just to defend old ego. They no longer turn every desire into destiny. They begin to walk lightly, speak carefully, love wisely, serve sincerely, release humbly, and bow inwardly before the mystery of existence. This is the fragrance of a soul close to moksha. So if you feel that your heart is slowly learning to let life move without your constant control, if you feel that your prayers are becoming less demanding and more sincere, if you feel that you can lose something and still remain connected to truth, if you feel that you no longer want to fight every change, If you feel that your soul is tired of forcing and ready to trust, do not think you are becoming defeated. Maybe your soul is becoming surrendered. Maybe the ego is finally lowering its head. Maybe the false self is beginning to melt. Maybe the long journey through birth and death has brought you close to the wisdom that cannot be understood by pride. The seventh golden sign of a soul near moksha is this: it no longer tries to control the whole universe from the prison of ego. It offers itself to the eternal truth, acts with purity, releases the result, and slowly becomes light enough to return to the freedom it has been seeking across many lifetimes. The Vedas reveal that moksha is not a small idea, not a beautiful word, and not a simple escape from pain. Moksha is the highest freedom of the soul. It is the ending of the endless wandering through desire, attachment, karma, birth, death, and rebirth. It is the moment when the soul no longer moves helplessly from one body to another, from one story to another, from one unfinished desire to another, from one karmic lesson to another. It is the sacred return of the soul to its eternal truth. Some souls are still deeply asleep in the world. They still believe pleasure will complete them, possessions will protect them, praise will define them, and people will save them from emptiness. They are not wrong for being at that stage, because every soul has its own journey, its own timing, and its own lessons. But some souls have already tasted enough of the world to understand that everything temporary eventually changes. They have loved and lost. They have gained and suffered. They have chased and become tired. They have been praised and forgotten. They have been attached and broken. They have returned again and again until the heart finally began to ask for something higher than temporary happiness. A soul close to moksha does not become close because it is proud, special, or superior to others. It becomes close because it has learned deeply. It has learned that pleasure is not the same as peace. It has learned that karma is not only punishment, but a teacher. It has learned that ego identity is too small to hold the truth of the soul. It has learned that attachment creates fear, compassion makes the heart lighter, truth is greater than comfort, and surrender is stronger than control. These lessons do not come only from books. They come from lifetimes of experience, pain, discipline, wisdom, and inner awakening. If this message touched something inside you, understand this carefully. Never become proud and say, "I am close to moksha." Pride itself can become the final chain. The soul that is truly moving toward freedom becomes more humble, not more arrogant. It becomes quieter, not louder. It becomes softer, not weaker. It becomes wiser, not judgmental. It begins to serve without needing applause, love without possession, act without ego, suffer without hatred, and surrender without fear. This humility is one of the greatest protections on the path. The world may still be around you. Your duties may still remain. Your family, work, body, responsibilities, emotions, and challenges may still be part of your life. But the difference is that the awakened soul does not belong to illusion in the same way anymore. It walks through the world with open eyes. It understands that every person is a teacher, every pain is a mirror, every attachment is a test, every delay is a lesson, every ending is a reminder, and every breath is an opportunity to move closer to truth. So do not waste your pain. Let pain purify you. Do not waste your loneliness. Let loneliness bring you closer to your inner self. Do not waste betrayal. Let betrayal teach you wisdom. Do not waste loss. Let loss teach you detachment. Do not waste love. Let love become pure instead of possessive. Do not waste this life. Let this life become a bridge toward freedom, because one day this body will be left behind. One day all names, titles, possessions, arguments, victories, and failures will remain in this world. What will travel with the soul is not the applause of people, not the beauty of the body, not the wealth of the hands, and not the image created in society. What travels is karma, consciousness, impressions, and the level of awakening. This is why the wise do not live carelessly. They know that every thought, every action, every desire, and every attachment shapes the journey of the soul. The soul near moksha begins to live with this awareness. It does not fear life, but it does not become drunk on life. It does not hate the world, but it does not worship the world. It does not reject love, but it refuses to turn love into bondage. It does not avoid duty, but it offers duty with purity. It does not beg for comfort only, but asks for truth. It does not demand that everything happen according to ego, but learns to surrender to the eternal law. And slowly the chains begin to weaken. The desire that once controlled the mind becomes softer. The fear that once ruled the heart becomes weaker. The anger that once burned the soul becomes quieter. The attachment that once felt impossible to release begins to loosen. The ego that once demanded attention begins to bow. The soul that once wandered unconsciously begins to remember its final destination. That destination is moksha. Moksha is freedom from ignorance. Moksha is freedom from fear. Moksha is freedom from craving. Moksha is freedom from hatred. Moksha is freedom from the false identity that says, I am only this body, this name, this story, this pain, this success, this failure. Moksha is the soul awakening to what it has always been beyond every lifetime. So if worldly pleasures no longer satisfy you the way they once did, if karma has made you wiser instead of bitter, if your ego feels heavy, if detachment is rising naturally, if compassion is replacing judgment, if truth matters more than comfort, and if surrender is becoming your deepest prayer, then maybe your soul is not lost. Maybe your soul is remembering. Maybe your soul has walked through enough darkness to finally turn toward the eternal light. But remember, the path to moksha is not about escaping life with fear. It is about living life with awareness. It is about becoming pure while fulfilling your duty. It is about releasing bondage while still acting with love. It is about seeing the temporary nature of the world without becoming bitter toward the world. It is about turning every moment into a step toward freedom. Let every breath become remembrance. Let every action become offering. Let every wound become wisdom. Let every blessing become gratitude. Let every ending become surrender. Let every relationship become a mirror. Let every challenge become purification. Let every silence become a doorway to the soul, because the final purpose of the soul is not endless chasing, it is awakening. The final purpose of birth is not only survival, it is realization. The final purpose of pain is not destruction, it is purification. The final purpose of wisdom is not pride, it is freedom. The Vedas reveal that the soul has been searching for this freedom across many lifetimes. It searched for it in pleasure, but pleasure faded. It searched for it in people, but people changed. It searched for it in success, but success became empty. It searched for it in control, but control created fear. And finally, after many journeys, the soul begins to understand that the freedom it was seeking outside was always hidden in awakening to its own eternal nature. This is why some souls are close to moksha. They are not close because life became easy. They are close because illusion became weak. They are not close because they avoided suffering. They are close because suffering became wisdom. They are not close because they owned more. They are close because they released more. They are not close because they became greater in the world. They are close because the world became smaller before the truth. So walk gently, walk humbly, walk with awareness. Do not compare your journey with another soul. Do not force awakening before its time. Do not become proud of spiritual knowledge. Do not turn moksha into an ego achievement. Simply purify your heart, watch your mind, act with Dharma, release attachment, practice compassion, seek truth, and surrender the result. And when the soul becomes free from the thirst that pulls it back, free from the fear that keeps it trapped, free from the ego that makes it separate, and free from the ignorance that hides its true nature, then the cycle begins to end. Then the wandering becomes still. Then the seeker returns home. Then the soul no longer asks, "What must I become?" It finally realizes what it always was. If this message reached your heart, write in the comments, "My soul seeks freedom." Like this video, subscribe to Akashic Vedas, and stay connected with this sacred wisdom because your soul may be closer to awakening than you think.